Hundreds in San Antonio joined U.S. Representative Joaquin Castro to protest the Trump administration's immigrant family separation and child treatment policies.
Right now, it seems like there isn't a great infrastructure in place to ensure that the parents know where their kids are and are able to reunite with them once their proceedings are over.
A final audit addressing financial operations sparks a political battle over the Alamo. Training expands in San Antonio for administering opioid overdose antidote Narcan. And for the first time in decades, independent cabbies will be able to operate their own taxis in Alamo City. I'm Chance Dorland with your Express Briefing for Friday, June 1st. Subscribe to this and other free content at expressnews.com/podcasts. And get each day's top news and sports headlines delivered to your inbox at expressnews.com/newsletters. Thursday evening, about 300 people rallied in San Antonio's Guadalupe Plaza to call for an end to the Trump administration's May announcement that parents who illegally cross the border will be prosecuted and separated from their children while going through criminal proceedings. The rally was part of the Where Are the Children social media campaign that took off across the U.S. following a flurry of news reports. San Antonio Express News immigration reporter Sylvia Foster Frau says the movement formed after 3 separate yet related news stories came together around the same time on social media.
One of them is an ACLU report that was recently released, even though the actual documents that they released were between 2009 and 2014. And it basically found a lot of migrant child abuse allegations. And then we have 2 other issues. We have the issues of immigrant families being separated at the border. This is the result of a crackdown imposed by the Trump administration that is basically ramping up prosecutions of parents who are crossing the border illegally, and as such are separated from their children. Their children are placed in a federal shelter system. And then you have a third issue as well. Out of a sampling of about 7,000 unaccompanied minors who were released from shelters into adult sponsor homes, there were 1,475 children who went unaccounted for.
The confluence of immigrant child-related news has meant some misinformation spread online.
Did the government lose track of them? Yes, but these 1,475 children are part of a sampling of 7,000 that got these checkup calls. So if they just didn't call back or didn't follow through with the calls, then they would have been marked as missing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, they've been sold to human traffickers necessarily. So I think it's important to be kind of realistic about what that number means. People also conflated that number with the immigrant families that are separated from their children. So they've been saying, these children get separated from their families and then the government loses track of them. And this crackdown of immigrant families has happened more recently, mostly since the beginning of this year. And so you can't really connect the dots that smoothly, even though it might seem easy to do.
U.S. Representative Joaquin Castro of San Antonio and a host of organizations have been planning rallies in major cities across the country.
Joaquin Castro was really a prominent voice in that and made calls across the country and kind of became a pseudo community organizer. And from there, all of the immigrants' rights advocacy groups that do this on a regular basis have been involved. The American Civil Liberties Union have been involved, and cities across the country have been planning rallies largely at the end of this week, basically trying to raise awareness of the plight of migrant children and also probably to propose solutions, much of which revolves around a rollback of the Trump administration's crackdown of these families.
Download the entirety of my interview with San Antonio Express News immigration reporter Sylvia Foster Frau on this week's episode of the In-Depth podcast, available for free at expressnews.com/podcasts. A final audit addressing financial operations at the Alamo is in the crossfire of a battle between Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush and the Democratic candidate hoping to unseat him. The land office, which has endured criticism over a public-private master plan to repair two of the Alamo structures, add a museum, and refurbish Alamo Plaza as a reverent battleground by 2024, expects to enter an agreement by July 1st with the nonprofit Alamo Trust Incorporated to provide daily operations at the state-owned Alamo grounds. But the report finds the Alamo Trust and the land office did not fully comply or have systems in place regarding procurement, daily deposits into the state treasury, or timely requests for and payment of replenishment funds, as well as other areas. As San Antonio grapples with a heroin addiction epidemic, Thursday about 80 medical providers and police officers were trained to administer opioid anti-overdose medication Narcan, either injected or given as a nasal spray at the UT Health San Antonio campus. They were the first Bexar County first responders to be trained under 2 April grants, totaling more than $4 million from the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, received by UT Health School of Nursing. While other states have declared opioid crises, Texas, with 2,831 drug fatalities last year, has a death rate that puts it in the bottom 3 of all 50 states. Alamo City's fire department's emergency medical services responders already are trained in using Narcan and administered the antidote to 2,354 patients in 2017. And for the first time in decades, later this year, independent cabbies will be able to operate their own taxis in San Antonio. Thursday, the city council voted 9-1 to dedicate 75 permits to independent drivers. But until the changes are implemented, drivers will work for a handful of companies that hold all current taxi permits in Alamo City. The change means 32 permits will be available by October 1st, with 25 and 18 permits released in the following 2 years, with the council giving authority to SAPD Chief William McManus starting October 1st to speed up the release of the remaining independent taxi permits. And that's your daily San Antonio Express News briefing for Friday, June 1st. Subscribe to this and other free content at expressnews.com/podcasts. I'm Chance Dorland.